Christine Millot, a 19-year-old expert diver, died along with her brother Stephen and two others in a tragic cave diving accident at the Shaft Sinkhole in Australia in 1973. What went wrong during their attempt to set a depth record, and how did this disaster change cave diving forever? Let's explore their harrowing story of the Shaft Sinkhole tragedy that shook Australia. In 1973, a terrible accident happened in Australia that changed cave diving forever. It all started with the Millot family, who were very good at diving. Kristen Millot was only 19 years old, but she was already an expert diver. She had been diving since the age of 5 years old, following in her father's footsteps. Christine and her brothers, Stephen and Glenn, were some of the best divers around. The Millots, along with their cousin, Jock Bockerman, decided to dive in a place called the Shaft. The Shaft was a big hole in the ground filled with water known as a sinkhole. It was located between Mount Gambier and the ocean, on land owned by dairy farmers. The Shaft had an interesting story. A farmer found it by accident when his horse fell into a hidden sinkhole while walking across a field. When the farmer looked inside, he saw a narrow opening about 20 feet deep. With water far below, he started throwing rocks into the hole, and they seemed to disappear into the dark water. What the farmer had found was much more than just a simple hole. 20 feet below the ground, there was a huge underground room, almost as big as a football field. During the day, blue light from the surface would shine into this room, making it look magical. This is why people called it the Shaft. Under the water, the shaft was even more impressive. At 60 feet deep, divers could find a big pile of rocks, the same ones the farmer had thrown in. From there, two tunnels went into different directions. One tunnel went southwest at about 260 feet deep, while the other went northwest and was 407 feet deep. By 1973, more than 8,000 people had explored the shaft. Many people thought the northwest tunnel had no bottom because no one had ever reached the end. This mystery made the Millot family and their friends want to explore it. The group's big goal was to set a new record by going down 250 feet into the cave. At that depth, it would be completely dark and they wouldn't be able to see much. They didn't know how dangerous this would be. On the day of the dive, 9 divers came to the shaft. They set up a tripod, a stand with 3 legs, over the hole and lowered a rope to help them get in and out. One diver stayed on top to help with supplies and safety, while 8 went down into the underground room. One of the divers was Robert Smith, who was in charge of the local diving club. He had been to the shaft more than 20 times before. He knew that the Millots wanted to try for a new record. The plan seemed simple at first. The group would go down 200 feet, staying close to the main room where they could still see some light from above. That they didn't even bring an extra guide rope. This was a big mistake. There were a few big problems that led to the disaster. The group didn't have a proper plan or clear leader. This caused confusion underwater. Cave diving was still new and there weren't many safety rules yet. Most importantly, none of the divers had much experience with cave diving. They were good at diving in open water, but caves are very different. As the dive began, everything seemed fine at first. The group passed a familiar pile of rocks and went into the northwest tunnel. Christine, Stephen, John, and another diver called Gordon pushed ahead, trying to reach their goal of 250 feet. But the divers were about to face problems they didn't expect. Back in 1973, divers used regular air tanks instead of the special gas mixtures used today. This meant they could only stay deep underwater for a short time before facing a problem called nitrogen narcosis. Nitrogen narcosis happens when a diver goes too deep. The pressure underwater makes the nitrogen in the air dissolve into their blood more easily. This makes divers feel dizzy and confused, like they're drunk. It's very dangerous when you're more than 200 feet underwater. As the 4 divers went deeper, they started to feel the effects of cave diving. Around 180 feet down, Robert Smith realized he was getting nitrogen narcosis. He wisely decided to go back to the main room. Glenn Millot noticed this and tapped Christine's shoulder to suggest that they should turn back. But Christine, wanting to reach the 250 feet mark, decided to keep going. Glenn followed Robert back to the safe area. He was worried, but not too scared yet. Soon after, 2 more divers, Reynold and Peter, came back because they were running out of air. That's when everyone realized something was wrong. Christine, Stephen, John, and Gordon were still deep in the cave and probably running out of air. In a panic, Glenn grabbed a new air tank and rushed back into the cave. He went down to the 225 feet mark and made a scary discovery. He found Stephen's camera and flashlight left on an edge. This meant that the 4 divers were probably dead. So what exactly happened in those dark tunnels? As the 4 divers went deeper, they used up the air very quickly. At those depths, they were using air 7 times faster than they would at the surface. Even though they were feeling the effects of nitrogen narcosis, they kept focusing on their goal, not realizing how much danger they were in. The divers ran into an unexpected and deadly problem: silt. As they moved through the narrow passages, they stirred up tiny particles in the water. This made it very hard to see. Soon, the water was so cloudy they couldn't even see their hands in front of their faces. Christine finally realized they couldn't reach 250 feet, but turning back was much harder than she thought. In the cloudy water, she couldn't tell which way would lead back to safety. The weather above was cloudy too, so the shaft of light that usually came into the cave was gone. They had no way to guide themselves. Trying desperately to escape the cloudy water, Christine swam upwards, hoping to find clear water near the top of the cave. Gordon followed her. Both divers were panicking now. They frantically searched in all directions with their flashlights, hoping to find a way out. As they bumped into the rough ceiling of the cave, they got hurt. Imagine how terrifying this would have been, surrounded by solid rock on all sides, in pitch black water, with no way to see how to get out. Their panic and desperate movements made them use up their already low air supply even faster. Eventually, Christine and Gordon realized there was nothing they could do. They sank to the bottom of the cave as their air ran out. John Bockerman, also suffering from low air and nitrogen narcosis, met the same fate. Stephen, who had been a bit ahead of the others, came closest to escaping. He managed to find his way towards the main room before he ran out of air. His camera and flashlight left on the edge were the only signs Glenn would have to find the rest of the dive team. The next day, police divers tried to find the bodies. They went down to 200 feet, but the water was still too cloudy to see much. They couldn't find any trace of the missing divers. For months, people kept searching without success. In January of the next year, something important happened. A film crew came to the shaft to make a movie about cave diving. They brought professional lights with them. As they lit up the cave at 50 feet deep, one of the crew members made a horrible discovery. He saw a third figure floating behind them. It was Stephen Millot's body, still wearing his diving suit. The landowner was upset knowing there were still 3 more bodies in the cave. In March 1974, he called a special diving team to find and bring out the remaining victims. At 185 feet deep, they found Kristen's body on the floor of the tunnel, with Gordon's body nearby. 20 feet below that, near a ledge, they found John Bockerman's body. The Shaft Sinkhole tragedy is one of the worst cave diving accidents in history. It was terrible for the Millot family, with Glenn being the only surviving sibling. After the tragedy, people started the Cave Divers Association of Australia. This group made new rules to make cave diving safer and prevent future disasters. They came up with guidelines for proper planning, using guide ropes, better equipment, and more training. While these new rules have made cave diving much safer, it's still a dangerous sport. People are still attracted to exploring underwater caves, and accidents can still happen even with better safety measures. The Shaft Sinkhole disaster reminds us just how powerful nature can be. It shows how important it is to be respectful, well prepared, and careful when exploring unknown places. It also shows us how thin the line is between pushing human limits and going too far into danger. Today, the shaft is both a memorial to those who died and a testament to human curiosity and bravery. People still dive there, but now there are much stricter rules and a better understanding of the risks. The sad story of Christine Millot and her companions teaches how important proper training, equipment, and planning are in extreme sports. It reminds us that even the most experienced people can fall victim to unexpected circumstances and the unforgiving nature of underwater caves. As we remember the lives lost in the shaft, we also recognize the improvements in cave diving that came from this tragedy. The legacy of Christine, Stephen, John, and Gordon lives on in the better safety standards and increased awareness that now guide cave divers around the world. Their story is a powerful warning. It reminds us that we need to balance human ambition with respect for nature's forces. It teaches us that respect, preparation, and humility are our best allies when facing the unknown. The Shaft Sinkhole disaster will always be an important moment in the history of cave diving. It was a tragic event that shocked Australia and the global diving community, but it also led to crucial improvements in making underwater exploration safer. In the end, the shaft stands as a silent monument to human courage, the power of nature, and the importance of respecting our limits. It continues to fascinate and caution us, serving as both a natural wonder and a somber reminder of the price of pushing boundaries too far. So that's all for today's video. If you found this story fascinating, be sure to subscribe for more incredible true stories from history. Don't forget to leave a comment sharing your thoughts on the Shaft Sinkhole disaster and its impact on cave diving safety.